Howdy folks, welcome back to Boondockery. I just got back from my secret fun spot, did a little recce out there, and it is late in the day and I am whooped, and I definitely don't want to spend a whole lot of time messing about with setting up a camp. So today I have a very quick and easy camp setup using a USGI poncho. Now this is what I'm using to set this camp up, and by all means, if you were in a dire strait and you just had to set things up, really a down tree and your poncho and some stakes and some cordage is all you need. But I'm going a little luxurious this time, so I have my poncho, I have my cordage, I have tent stakes, which you easily can make your own, and a heavy duty space blanket. I have my Swagman roll, and I have my Thermarest Z-Lite folding sleep mat. Now the principle to this is pretty simple. You're going to roll out your poncho rectangularly. You're going to drape one end of your poncho just over the top arc of the down tree. You're going to extend 550 cord or whatever type of cordage you have out from the grommets and stake those down just on the other side. Then you extend the poncho out the other way and do the same thing. Now it was very, very warm today, and it's going to retain a lot of heat well into the evening, well past midnight, and it's finally going to start to cool down a little bit. So I don't want this rubber and nylon material locking in that heat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use two Y sticks at the end before I extend out my 550 cord to stake down to lift that up a little bit, because this ground has got a lot of residual heat throughout the day absorbing from the sun. And right now it's almost 6:30. We're going to be completely in the dark by around 8:15. So this is a very fast shelter to set up, and I'm going to get to it. Let me make one clarification. I accidentally grabbed my OPSEC poncho, which is a little bit longer than a standard GI issue poncho. Now as you can see, I've got it draped over the back of it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use toggles to attach my 550 cord to the grommets. This is the way I'm going to attach my grommet with the 550 cord. Let's make a short bend and the 550 cord, and I will run both ends of the cordage, the long end and the short end, through my toggle. Lock that in there good, and then I'm just going to run the 550 cord through the grommet. Both ends, and that locks it in. I don't need to tie anything, and when I'm ready to take this apart, it comes apart super fast and super easy. I'm going to go ahead and do that to all four corners. Now at the ends of these 550 cords, you're going to want to go ahead and put some type of a tensioning knot in there so you can actually get some tension and adjust it as you need to. And whatever tensioning knot you usually use, that's what you want to do. And nothing fancy. You can even use guy line tensioners if you want to. That's just what I do. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this out, put a stake through it, and stake it out on the top end, and then I'll go over to do the back end. You want to pull these out just a little bit out to the sides. You don't want to get them real tight right off the bat, because we're going to do adjustments on all sides. Now when you get to this side, this is when you start pulling things a little tighter. And you don't want to go super tight right off the bat. You just want to get it sort of taut. Again, you want to pull it off to the side just a little bit. I've got a couple Y sticks I'm going to use down here at the bottom. Just lift those up, press them into the ground just a little bit, angle them back toward the tarp. And now I'm going to go ahead and go by and start tensioning all of the cordage. Now when you're doing all your tensioning, it's important to go ahead, since you already have that taut in the back to where it's going to stay where it is. This is going to pull that good and tight, and then when you go back on the other side of the log and you tension those down, it's noticeably stronger. Now we need to do something about this pit in the middle of our shelter. And we're just going to reach in. Now I'm pretty fortunate in that it's not supposed to rain tonight, but whether it is or isn't, you always want to have your opening on the downhill side of your shelter. And what you're going to do, you're going to pull that as taut as it will actually go. Now a regular GI poncho has, you know, it's more simple than this OPSEC poncho, which actually less is more for certain things. My battery died in the middle of that scene, so I don't know exactly where it shut off, but you want to tighten the poncho opening as much as you can. A standard GI poncho, your grommets down here for your lines, your cordage, it's going to pull that all the way top. But for tonight, this is actually going to come into an advantage because it's going to provide just a little bit of ventilation to allow some heat out. Again, not expecting any rain whatsoever, so that's a good thing. And if I've got the cord locks on here, I mean, you very easily tie a couple half hitches in there, maybe a slip knot, just to hold it in place. You know, nothing major. And now we've got this area here, that's where all this is puckered up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run a piece of bungee from the tree that's over there around this into the tree that's behind me, and that's going to lift this up. Now my bungee is too short to do the job, so I've got two of the same length. So I'm just going to make a loop on the end of one, and then I'm going to pull that up and through. I'm going to push that in, wrap it around, underneath, and then back through, and it'll form a junction that you can easily get untied when you're finished. So we're going to tie this to this tree, right up a little branch, so it has a resting spot so it won't adjust itself down. Nothing fancy with this because the bungee is going to be good and tight. So I'm just going to do a slip knot, good tight slip knot, because when I pull this tight, it's going to tighten that slip knot up. Now where the bulge is, I'm going to pull that together, and I'm going to wrap my bungee around that several times. And because it's bungee, it's going to tighten and constrict, and 2 or 3 times around should definitely do the trick. And one more time, and I'm quite confident that that is going to hold. Now I'm going to tie the other end to the other tree and lift this center up. Here we go. I'll bring you and let you have a closer look. Now I'm going to bring you in and let you see the shelter as it is right now. The Y sticks are keeping the corners of the tarp up and off, so I have a lot of room underneath. The bungees that are attached to the hood, attached to that tree, this tree here, are doing their job. Yeah, the nice thing about this being warm weather, there's space underneath the log, so that's going to allow airflow. And at any point, I feel it not being as taut as I need to, I've got my tensioning knots here that I can tighten it up anytime I want. This is a super fast and easy shelter to put up. And if it's an emergency situation, you don't have bedding or anything else like that, at least you can make a shelter with a poncho to keep you out of the elements if something, you know, unexpected were to occur with the weather. Now I'm going to show you what I'm going to be doing for my bedding. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spread my heavy-duty space blanket out underneath the shelter, and then I'm going to stake down the corners. Now, in the event that I was expecting rain, I would actually put poles underneath the fly I'm making with the poncho to wrap this around to pull that in to where none of this would be protruding out from underneath the shelter. It would all be contained underneath, so therefore it would not be a water trap. Now, before I walk you around, let you check out the ground cloth. I failed to mention, before you ever do put the ground cloth down, You walk around, you pick up sticks, you check for pointy stuff, check for rocks, things like that. Things that are going to make it an uncomfortable night's sleep. Remove those before you put down your ground cloth. I'm going to walk you around, let you check out the ground cloth. And of course, fine adjustments can be made and will be made when need be. But that essentially is part 1 and part 2 of the shelter. Now I'm going to get my bedding ready. Now I'm going to be using my Swagman roll. And the first thing I'm going to do with my Swagman roll is that I am going to make certain that everything is zipped up. Everything is. I'm going to unzip it by half. And then I'm going to insert my sleep pad all the way down to the toe of my Swagman roll. Now my sleeping mat is inside my Swagman roll all the way to the toe. I'm going to carefully pull this around and zip it the rest of the way. Now, that sleep roll, or the sleep mat, is now completely contained inside my Swagman roll. So now, when I lay down, I don't have to worry about my sleeping bag or the Swagman roll sliding off the sleep mat and me winding up spending the rest of the night with my body touching the ground with only a Swagman roll behind it. I'm going to go ahead and put this under the shelter. I have the Swagman roll with the sleep mat inside of it in place. Now, for all intents and purposes, my shelter is complete and the sun is still up, which means I have time to cook myself a little supper while it's still light. Morning, folks. Oh, it was a very rough night's sleep. I've done a series of videos, or not a series, but several videos over the past 24 hours, and this was the culmination of a recce of a new area for the secret fun spot, and I was really exhausted, and I apologize for the lack of quality for the video that I shot last night of the construction of the shelter, and especially I was wrapping up a field ration review, and I'm certain that didn't wind up finishing up as it should. But I was physically exhausted. Mentally, I was a little frazzled. A lot of stuff going on. But last night with this shelter, it was still very warm from the high temperatures that we had yesterday. Yeah, probably right around 85 degrees at the hottest point, and my body's not acclimated to that kind of temperature yet. And we've in the past couple weeks we've gotten into the 70s, which was really nice. But like I mentioned in another video that I shot this weekend, that on Monday This is Sunday morning. On Monday, it was 28 degrees and snowing. And so within a week, we've gone from winter weather to summer weather. And, but anyway, I just wanted to put that out there, and I apologize for the lack of quality for this video. It was meant to be a short one anyway, just so I wouldn't make the recce video a whole lot longer. So what I'm going to do now is talk a little bit about the shelter, pros and cons and things like that. When you set these shelters up, these are an impromptu, very fast, very easy shelter to put up. And this would definitely not be someone's preferred camping shelter if you were wild camping, bushcrafting, what have you, unless you were traveling extremely light. And so as far as a survival shelter goes, it's absolutely fantastic. For traveling super light, it's great. It's great. But you are not going to get the comfort levels that you get from a regular tent or a hammock setup. And as a result of that, some of the cons of this type of shelter is that you are at the mercy of the terrain. This was uneven, and it was not comfortable to sleep on. But after you know, a while, you sort of like will wiggle around in one position to where it's comfortable enough if you get a few hours of sleep at a time before you have to readjust. The mosquitoes were absolutely horrible last night, and mosquito netting is extremely lightweight. It's very compact. If you do plan on using this type of a shelter, and it's a time of year where mosquitoes or any other insects are going to be very active, definitely want to throw that in on your kit. Laying underneath this shelter, because it was elevated, there was some airflow. The heat really wasn't trapped in it like you would have with an A-frame type of shelter or anything like that. So it was a decent airflow, especially with the gap underneath this log was really nice and decent airflow. But it was still very hot. And because the mosquitoes were really bad, I was constantly having to apply insect repellent and constantly sweating it back off. So I would say I probably fell asleep 1:30 a.m. and I was so exhausted, I just laid there. It was sort of like, you know, an exhausted haze until I actually really fell asleep. And then probably around 3, it got fairly chilly, and then I was able to actually get in the Swagman roll, and surprisingly enough, I was fairly comfortable until I woke up not long ago. Right now it's 8:25, which is at least a couple hours, if not 3 hours past sunup, which is very unusual for me. So you are at the mercy of the terrain. Comfort is not great. You can adjust the elevation and the amount of airflow with this depending upon what kind of stakes that you put on there, how low you want to sling it. So it didn't trap the heat, which was good. And mosquitoes. Those were the biggest downfalls of this particular shelter last night. And as far as the pluses go, as you saw in my not great video last night, setting it up is incredibly fast and easy. Had I not been filming, I could probably get this shelter up, including cutting the Y stakes and everything else, within about 10 to 15 minutes max. And that is a fairly fast shelter. You could definitely set it up faster if you didn't have to cut Y straps, or you know, it would take longer if you had to cut your own tent stakes. I had the aluminum ones that I use, and everything went together very, very quickly. As far as the center peak, you may not be in a position to where you have trees on either side. So you might want to go ahead and cut stakes. For those, you'd have to anchor them at the point away from the shelter on both sides, and then use your bungee on the inside to lift it up. But I would highly recommend that. I have seen people that have put like a stake up through the middle. That affords you very little protection from the elements whatsoever, because you have maybe 2.5 feet at max on either side of where that center stake would be, which would not make it a good shelter if you had inclement weather. And so the ease of setup is fantastic. The speed of setup is fantastic. All of this very easily can be rolled up together in one neat package. Well, minus the folding thermarest sleep pad, which, by the way, as thin as it was thick enough to be able to actually get some fairly comfortable rest on uneven ground. I didn't notice any rocks, roots, sticks, or anything else like that, which I did go through the area real quick and clear those out before I put down my ground sheet. Overall, a super easy, super fast shelter to put up. If you're traveling super lightweight, this is ideal. In an emergency situation, impromptu camp, this is fantastic. It works great, but you have to look at it for what it is. If I were to be able to pack for a decent, comfortable night's sleep, it would not be this shelter. However, you want to rough it, you are traveling light, it's excellent. It's excellent. And I might, yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. I'll take a couple long shots of it for you to see that having either a neutral color or camouflage poncho really keeps it low key. It really helps allow you to not be observed. It allows you to blend into the environment. And I was able to catch some footage yesterday on my recce of wild turkey. And wild turkey have incredible eyesight. They hear very well, and they have excellent sense of smell. And I was coming up over a rise, so I was above the turkey. And as soon as I saw the turkey was looking away from me, so I stopped. And the turkey's scanning around, sort of detects something's going on, but looked around for a little bit, and then went back to moving around and stuff like that. I was able to use the camera I'm shooting with right now, because I was carrying it, headed back out of the secret fun spot area, and I was able to get some footage of the wild turkey. Granted, it's probably not going to be the greatest footage, but I was able to get some footage of one. Had I been wearing regular clothing, I would have very easily been spotted. And turkey are colorblind. However, the pattern in my camouflage clothing will break up my silhouette enough not to be noticed in black and white. So, a lot of people say, well, why are you always wearing camouflage? Why are you always wearing muted colors? I want to blend in with my environment. I don't want to be this bright, brilliant, glowing thing that's floating around in the woods. I prefer it that way. Had it not been for me wearing camouflage, very easily would have been spotted by the turkey. I never would have been able to get the footage. I never would have been able to watch it for the period of time that I did, and that was gratifying. So the tarps, ponchos, what have you, being a good neutral color or a camouflage pattern, I think is a benefit to being able to spend time in the woods. You might not want to go camouflage. You know, some people, that's just not their thing. That's perfectly fine. There are a lot of muted, neutral, subdued colors out there that's absolutely fantastic to use in the woods. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple shots of this from a distance, and then I'll go ahead and wrap things up. Well, folks, this was a fast and furious one for me. And again, I apologize for any lack of quality due to the situation in which I filmed it. But hopefully you got a little bit out of this. Maybe this might be something that you would want to throw together for either a bug out bag, get home bag, something to just throw and keep in your vehicle for emergency situations, or if you get into extreme lightweight hiking, things like that, you're going to be doing some recon of particular hunting areas or camping areas that you want to explore, and you want to have something with you just in case you aren't going to be able to get back out in the time that you wanted to. You'd have an emergency shelter. I think this is an absolutely ideal situation to be able to do that. Not only do you have everything that you need to have shelter, but you also have protection from rain with the poncho, and you have, like my configuration, I had the folding sleep pad. That right there is something that would come in very, very handy to be able to take out and just unfold a little bit to be able to sit that on a rock and be able to sit on the rock to make it much more comfortable, just to be able to take a load off, to rest. So a lot of different elements in here have dual purposes, and maybe this is something that you would consider trying out in the future, or maybe just be able to have on hand just in case you may need to make an impromptu, very fast and fairly efficient shelter. Well, folks, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.